At the edge of the world, where oxygen is scarce and logic tends to stay behind at base camp, there's a mountain waiting. Not just one, 7, one on every continent. They call it the 7 Summits, a challenge so ambitious it almost sounds made up. But it's real, deadly real. These peaks lure in adventurers, dreamers, CEOs, and once in a while, someone who thought, how hard can it really be? The answer, harder than your lungs can handle, more expensive than your wedding, and colder than your ex's heart. And yet, every year, people from every corner of the world set out to climb them all. This is not a travel vlog. This is not a top 10 mountains you should visit before you die video. This is the full, uncensored breakdown of what it truly takes to climb each of the 7 summits. The truth behind the cost, financial, physical, emotional, and the stories of those who tried and didn't come back. Because on these mountains, it's not about the Instagram post, it's about survival. And sometimes it's about learning what you're really made of, 5,000 meters above sea level, with a storm closing in and no plan B. This is the 7 summits, and this is where the journey begins. Mount Denali, North America. In Alaska's vast wilderness, where the air is razor sharp and silence stretches for miles, one mountain rises above it all, Denali. At 6,190 meters, it's the tallest peak in North America. But height isn't what makes it terrifying. It's the cold, the storms, the isolation. This isn't just a mountain, it's a frozen proving ground where dreams come to live or die. They used to call it Mount McKinley, but the native name, Denali, the high one, captures its spirit better. This mountain doesn't care how much you've trained or how expensive your gear is. It doesn't care if you've climbed Kilimanjaro or if your Instagram bio says adventurer. Denali will still slap you with minus 40 degrees Celsius wind chills and ask, you sure you're built for this? Unlike Everest, there are no Sherpas here. No porters, no yaks to carry your gear. You haul it yourself. 120 pounds of food, fuel, and equipment split between a backpack and a sled. It's like dragging your own coffin up a glacier, just with more granola bars. And yet, climbers flock to it. Because Denali is pure. It's a test of raw endurance. It's you versus the mountain with no one to bail you out. As legendary climber Bradford Washburn once said, Denali will never be tamed, only respected. And you better respect it, because even the approach flight to base camp feels like rolling the dice with nature. You land on the Kahiltna Glacier, surrounded by silence, white void, and towering ice walls. That's your new home for the next 3 weeks. There are no cafes, no huts, just wind, snow, and the haunting thought, what have I gotten myself into? Climbing Denali is one of the rare experiences where you willingly pay a fortune to suffer. The average guided climb, $11,900, and that's just the beginning. Before you even step foot on the glacier, you've already spent thousands. A proper downsuit, $1,000. Mountaineering boots warm enough to keep your toes attached, $600. A 4-season tent, sleeping bag, glacier glasses, harness, avalanche beacon. You're not packing light, you're packing debt. Most climbers spend between $3,000 to $5,000 just on gear. Then there's the travel. Denali doesn't exactly have a welcome center with valet parking. You'll need to get yourself to Talkeetna, Alaska, flights, hotels, maybe a bush plane or two. Add $1,000 to $2,000 for logistics, lodging, and last-minute gear purchases because you forgot your stove fuel. Again. And don't forget the $370 national park fee, because nothing says, welcome to the wilderness, like paying rent to the snow. Also, bring cash for guide tips. These folks keep you alive, and tipping is expected. A few $100s is standard. If you skimp on that, you might be sent back down the glacier in silence. All told, most climbers spend around $15,000 to $17,000 when everything is included. That's more than a new car. And unlike a car, Denali doesn't come with seat warmers or Bluetooth. Just 50-mile-an-hour winds, and a view you'll only earn if everything goes right. And here's the kicker. After all this money, there's still no guarantee of a summit. If a storm rolls in and traps your team at 14,000 feet for 6 days, your dream might just dissolve into the fog. Denali doesn't do refunds, and nature has never accepted a credit card dispute. Climbing Denali is a financial commitment as much as a physical one. It's not about booking a trip. It's about investing in a chance that you'll face your limits, and maybe, just maybe, stand on top of a continent. On Denali, there are no shortcuts, no fancy lodges, no one waiting with hot cocoa, and a medal at the summit. It's just you, your team, your sled, and the realization that you're 20,000 feet above sea level, hauling your body through a frozen maze. And Denali doesn't care who you are. Doesn't matter if you're a CEO, a weekend warrior, or someone who read into thin air and thought, I could do that. This mountain levels everyone, literally. Some of the fittest climbers have collapsed under its weight, while others, with quiet determination and duct-taped boots, have made it to the top. The physical toll is obvious. Frostbitten fingers, blistered feet, sunburn from snow reflection so strong it feels like the sun's personal grudge. But the mental toll, that's where Denali really shines. Waiting out a storm at 17,000 feet in a thin nylon tent while winds tear at your sanity, there's nothing romantic about it. It's you, a freeze-dried chili mac, and your thoughts. And some of those thoughts aren't friendly. Still, people come, year after year, because Denali offers something no other mountain quite does: silence. Not the casual kind, but the type of silence that stretches across glaciers, that reminds you just how small you are, that if you stop, even for a second, it could be over. And maybe that's why climbers keep coming, because in that frozen silence, somewhere between exhaustion and awe, you find clarity, you find humility, you find out who you are when no one is watching, except the mountain. And Denali, it watches everything, but it never says a word. Kilimanjaro, Africa. It's sunrise in Tanzania, and through the orange haze over the savannah, a giant silhouette rises into the sky. Mount Kilimanjaro, Africa's tallest mountain. A sleeping volcano wrapped in snow, standing guard over the continent like a forgotten god. And here's the twist. It's probably the only one of the 7 summits where someone's aunt, co-worker, or college roommate has actually made it to the top. No ice axes, no crevasse rescue training, just determination, a decent pair of hiking boots, and maybe a good Wi-Fi signal for that summit selfie. But don't let the non-technical label fool you. Kilimanjaro may not require ropes or crampons, but it demands something else entirely. The ability to keep moving when your lungs scream for air and your brain starts throwing dramatic monologues about turning back. Altitude is the real beast here. Nearly 50% of people who attempt the climb don't make it to the summit. That's not because they didn't train. It's because they underestimated it. You start in dense rainforest where monkeys swing through the canopy and the air is thick with moisture. Then, the landscape shifts into alpine desert and finally into a frozen moonscape where your water bottle turns into a popsicle before breakfast. Every step higher, your body gets slower, your head heavier. It's not about muscles anymore. It's about mindset. And yet, people keep coming because there's something magnetic about Kilimanjaro, something symbolic. This isn't just a mountain, it's a test. A pilgrimage, a quiet whisper in your mind that says, if I can do this, what else am I capable of? As Nelson Mandela once said, after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb, but few are as iconic or as deceptively demanding as Kilimanjaro. At first glance, Kilimanjaro seems like the budget option. No need for oxygen tanks or fancy alpine gear. Just pack your hiking clothes, book a flight, and off you go, right? Not quite. Climbing Kilimanjaro is often marketed like a safari with altitude, comfortable tents, smiling porters, and 3-course meals on the mountain. But behind the warm food and summit certificates lies a surprisingly expensive truth. The average cost of a Kilimanjaro expedition in 2025, around $2,700 per person. That's for a mid-range, 7-day climb with a licensed guide company, proper logistics, and basic comforts. But if you want a bit more luxury, heated tents, flush toilets, private chef-style meals, expect to pay upwards of $6,000 or even $9,500 on premium packages. So where does all that money go? First, the Kilimanjaro National Park fees. Just entering the mountain costs about $1,000. That includes conservation fees, rescue fees, camping or hut use, and the wages of your mountain crew. And yes, every climber is required by law to hire a full team. Guides, porters, cooks, camp masters. For every one climber, there are usually 3 or 4 crew members. On high-end trips, closer to 6. Then there's the VAT, an 18% tax added to all services. It's the kind of hidden surprise that shows up at the bottom of your invoice like a punchline you didn't ask for. And don't forget about the gear. While Kilimanjaro doesn't require technical climbing equipment, you'll still need quality layers, waterproof boots, a proper sleeping bag, and enough snacks to feed a small army. Add in flights to Tanzania, hotel stays before and after the climb, travel insurance, tips for your crew, and you're suddenly staring at a total cost closer to $4,000 to $5,000. So no, Kilimanjaro isn't cheap. It's just sneaky. It wears the mask of an accessible adventure, but by the time you're sipping ginger tea in a mess tent at 4,000 meters, you'll realize this mountain is running a very well-organized business, and guess what? You're funding it, one step at a time. Every year, thousands of trekkers arrive at the foot of Kilimanjaro, chasing a dream. But most of them wouldn't get past the second camp without the quiet force behind the summit, Tanzania's porters. For every climber, there's an entire team working behind the scenes. Guides who lead the way, cooks who whip up hot meals at 12,000 feet, and porters who carry nearly everything: tents, food, water, even your duffel bag filled with too many just-in-case layers. You walk with a day pack. They carry the mountain on their backs. It's humbling, and it should be. Because while you're catching your breath on a scenic overlook, they've already passed you twice, once going up with a 20-kilo load, and again heading back down for more. These teams don't just make Kilimanjaro climbs possible, they make them human. They're the ones who offer ginger tea when you feel sick from altitude, who sing songs to lift your spirits at camp, who smile even when they're exhausted. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Not all tour operators treat them fairly. To cut costs, some companies pay porters less than $10 a day. Others overload them with gear, violating strict weight limits. That's why responsible climbers now look for tour operators certified by KPAP, the Kilimanjaro Porters Assistance Project. It's not just about ticking an ethical box. It's about making sure the people helping you reach your dream aren't being crushed in the process. Because in the end, no one climbs Kilimanjaro alone. You might take the summit photo. You might earn the bragging rights, but the real heroes? They're the ones setting up your tent before you arrive, boiling water before you wake, and cheering the loudest when you finally reach the top. On this mountain, reaching the summit isn't just about altitude. It's about gratitude. And the higher you go, the more that matters. Mount Vinson, Antarctica. Deep in the frozen belly of Antarctica, buried under skies that never sleep, and winds that don't play fair, there's a mountain few people even know exists. Mount Vinson. It's the coldest, quietest, and arguably most exclusive of the 7 summits, like a private VIP party for climbers with serious commitment, or just serious credit limits. Vinson Massif isn't just hard to get to. It's ridiculous. First, you have to fly to Punta Arenas, Chile, then hop on a cargo plane chartered by a company called ALE, Antarctic Logistics and Expeditions. No, you can't just book it on Skyscanner. From there, you land on a blue ice runway in the middle of a continent that literally has no native population. It's like trying to climb a mountain on Mars. If Mars had penguins and charged 47 grand for the experience. Standing at 4,892 meters, Vincent is the highest peak in Antarctica. But don't let the elevation fool you. This isn't about altitude. It's about environment. The average temperature on a good day is minus 30 degrees Celsius. And while it doesn't snow much, the wind is like a slap from Mother Nature herself. You don't just dress in layers here, you armor up. Because if something goes wrong, you're hundreds of miles away from the nearest base with no helicopters coming to save you. Yet every year, a select group of climbers steps into that white void, armed with gear, guts, and a frozen smile. They're not here for the views, though they're surreal. They're here to say, I climbed the bottom of the world, to stand where almost no one else has. It's not just a summit, it's a statement, a flex, the kind you only make after surviving 2 weeks in a freezer with no shower. And in case you're wondering, yes, there's a satellite phone, but don't expect Netflix. This is the kind of mountain where even your thoughts have to bundle up. Let's talk numbers, because climbing Mount Vinson isn't just a physical achievement. It's a financial adventure too. This is, hands down, the most expensive climb of the 7 summits. The average price for a standard guided expedition, around $54,200, and that's before you even buy socks. So what exactly are you paying for? Well, first, you're flying to Antarctica, which is basically the luxury suite of adventure travel. Those special charter flights from Punta Arenas to Union Glacier cost a small fortune on their own, and they don't even come with a bag of peanuts. From there, a separate flight takes you directly to Vincent Base Camp. You're officially off-grid, like way off. No roads, no rescue helicopters, no Starbucks, just you, your team, and several thousand square kilometers of snow that doesn't care about your life insurance policy. Then there's the logistics. Tents, food, gear, base camp infrastructure, all of it has to be flown in and out. Nothing is left behind, not even your poop. Yes, you carry that out too. Welcome to Leave No Trace, Antarctic Edition. The cost also covers expert guides, satellite communication, emergency support, and enough down insulation to survive a freezer aisle meltdown. And let's not forget the mandatory evacuation insurance, because if something does go wrong, you're not just calling a cab. You're calling an international rescue team with a snow runway. And still, despite the astronomical cost, the slots fill up. People save for years. Some even get sponsors or corporate backers. Because in the world of high-altitude achievement, summiting Vincent isn't just rare, it's elite. It says, I didn't just climb a mountain, I climbed that mountain. And yes, I still check my bank account with one eye closed. So no, Mount Vincent won't break altitude records, but it might break your savings account. Still thinking it's worth it? Wait until you hear what happens if the weather turns, and your flight home gets delayed by 2 weeks. Climbing Vincent is like stepping into a blank page, just endless white, broken only by jagged ridges and the crunch of your crampons. There are no trees, no sounds, no bird song, just silence so thick it feels like a weight on your chest. It's beautiful, yes, but also unnerving. Because in Antarctica, you're not just climbing a mountain, you're surviving a continent. The expedition itself lasts about 10 to 14 days, depending on weather, which, by the way, is as unpredictable as a toddler on espresso. Storms can roll in and trap teams in their tents for days. No movement, just the howling wind, the flap of canvas, and the shared scent of 5 days without a shower. Luxury, right? And while the guides are top tier and the food is surprisingly good, think hot soups and freeze-dried curry that actually tastes like curry, it's still Antarctica. You don't climb Vincent for fun. You climb it for meaning, for isolation, for the challenge of existing in a place that was never meant for humans in the first place. Only about 1,200 people have ever stood on Vincent's summit. That's fewer than the number who summit Everest every year. It's not because the climb is technically difficult, it's because so few people are willing to put themselves through what it takes to even get there. The cold, the cost, the commitment, but those who make it say something changes. There's a moment, just before the summit, where the sky stretches into infinity and the wind dies for a heartbeat. It's quiet, like the earth holding its breath. And in that instant, you realize how rare this moment is, how few people will ever feel it, and how far you've come, not just in miles, but in mindset. Then you snap a summit photo, wearing 4 layers of down, and the biggest smile your frostbitten face can manage. Because yes, your fingers are numb, your wallet is empty, and your flight out might be delayed for a week. But you just climbed the loneliest, coldest mountain on Earth, and somehow, it feels like the warmest place you've ever been. Mount Elbrus, Europe. Mount Elbrus may not be a household name like Everest, but don't be fooled. It's Europe's highest peak, standing at a frosty 5,642 meters, 18,510 feet, with a personality as dramatic as a Russian novel and weather just as unpredictable. Nestled in the Caucasus Mountains of southern Russia, Elbrus is technically dormant, but don't worry, it's only been 2,000 years since it last erupted. What could go wrong? Climbers come to Elbrus for different reasons. Some want to cross another continent off their 7 summits list. Others are drawn by the surreal contrast. You ride a cable car halfway up a mountain, sleep in a hut that looks like a Soviet bunker, and still get some of the most breathtaking alpine views in the world. And somewhere between all that, you're trying to remember how to say, "Where's the bathroom?" in Russian while wearing crampons. But don't let the infrastructure fool you. Elbrus may have chairlifts, snowcats, and a surprisingly decent bowl of soup waiting for you at base camp. But summit day is no joke. You'll be ascending over 1,800 meters in a single push, through thin air, biting winds, and temperatures that make your eyelashes freeze. It's an exhausting 10 to 14-hour grind, up, and more up. At that point, even gravity feels like it's personally offended by your presence. The real challenge, though, isn't always physical. It's mental. You're out in a place where the line between Europe and Asia gets blurry, the Wi-Fi disappears, and you're left with your thoughts. And maybe the sound of your guide singing Russian folk songs while kicking steps in the snow. Elbrus is deceptive. Not technically the hardest of the 7 summits, but not to be underestimated either. Especially if the weather turns and you suddenly find yourself inside a cloud that doesn't want to let you out. So whether you're a seasoned climber or someone who just really likes pushing their limits in remote Russian landscapes, Elbrus is a mountain that'll test you, reward you, and maybe even change you. And hey, if nothing else, you'll come home with a great story and a newfound appreciation for warm showers and oxygen. Compared to its icy cousins like Everest or Vinson, Mount Elbrus looks downright affordable at first glance. Guided expeditions start around $2,500 to $4,500, depending on the length, route, and luxury level. For that price, you get airport pickup, a Russian guide with legs of steel, a snowcat ride halfway to the summit, and probably more beet soup than you ever asked for. But here's where things get spicy. Elbrus is full of hidden costs. Want a private room at the base hotel before the climb? That's extra. Need a snowcat to skip part of the brutal summit push? That's also extra, around $900 round trip. Altitude, sickness medication, rental gear, satellite phone credit, visas, international flights, and mandatory rescue insurance? You guessed it. More extra than your one friend who shows up to brunch in hiking boots and a GoPro. And if you're thinking of going the ultra-budget route, self-guided, unsupported, or booking a local operator for under $1,500, just remember, you're dealing with glaciated terrain, unstable weather, and a language barrier that doesn't care how many Duolingo streaks you've hit. Some people have tried to do Elbrus cheap and ended up stuck at a remote hut with no summit, no refund, and a stomach full of questionable stew. Tipping is also part of the game. Most guides expect it. It's not required, but after someone's dragged your frozen body uphill for 6 days and kept you alive during a whiteout, handing over a few $100 feels less like a tip and more like a thank you note in cash. All in all, the real cost of a well-supported Elbrus climb usually lands between $4,000 and $6,000 when everything is included. Not exactly a steal, but compared to Antarctica, it's practically a clearance sale. So yes, Elbrus is one of the cheaper 7 summits. Just make sure you don't show up thinking cheap means easy. Because in Russia, even the budget climbs come with a side of cold reality. Climbing Mount Elbrus isn't just a physical challenge, it's a cultural collision. You'll find yourself standing on the edge of Europe and Asia, where Orthodox churches dot the valleys, ancient shepherd paths wind through green hills, and high above it all, a twin-peaked volcano watches over the Caucasus like a frozen sentry. The climb itself is surreal. You wake up before dawn in a metal hut or a basic mountain shelter, the air inside colder than outside because insulation is more of a suggestion than a reality. You throw on every layer you own, click into your crampons, and shuffle into the dark like a half-frozen zombie army. The summit route is long and exposed, and if you're lucky, the weather will let you see more than just your own breath. At around 5,000 meters, something changes. The air gets thinner, the silence deeper, and your legs heavier. This is where the summit becomes real. The path winds toward the saddle between the 2 peaks. Elbrus is actually a double summit, though most climbers aim for the higher western one. On a clear day, you'll see the entire Caucasus range spread out like a jagged crown. On a bad day, you'll see nothing but the inside of your goggles. And here's where Elbrus really earns your respect. It doesn't care how easy people say it is. Every year, climbers underestimate the mountain and get into trouble. Crevasse falls, whiteouts, altitude sickness. It's not Everest, but it's no joke either. Local rescue teams are well trained, but you're still hours away from proper medical care if something goes sideways. Yet despite all that, Elbrus has a strange magic. Maybe it's the mix of raw wilderness and post-Soviet charm. Maybe it's the people, the guides, the porters, the climbers from every corner of the globe sharing instant noodles and summit dreams. Or maybe it's just the quiet moment on top, when you realize that yes, you're technically on top of Europe, and yes, your nose is frozen, but you made it. And then, just as you're basking in that victory, it hits you. You still have to get back down. Mount Everest, Asia. Welcome to Everest, the place where ambition meets altitude, and where your bank account might need supplemental oxygen long before you do. Towering at 8,848 meters, Everest is not just the highest mountain on Earth, it's the ultimate proving ground, a name that echoes in the dreams of adventurers and echoes even louder in the spreadsheets of expedition accountants. For climbers around the world, summiting Everest is like getting a PhD in pain, perseverance, and paperwork. But let's get this out of the way. Climbing Everest is not a hike. It's a full-scale, logistical, financial, and emotional operation. Just getting a permit in 2025 will cost you $15,000. And that's before you've even bought your first freeze-dried curry or felt the wrath of the infamous Kumbu cough. Back in the day, Everest was a frontier. In 1953, Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay stood on the summit with nothing but determination and wool socks. Now, you get guided up with satellite phones, high-flow oxygen, and yes, even a heated dining tent if you're going luxury. Everest has changed. It's gone from daring expedition to high-altitude tourism. But make no mistake, it's still as deadly, unpredictable, and awe-inspiring as ever. Each year, hundreds attempt the climb. But it's not just weather and altitude that can break you. It's the crowding in the death zone, the bureaucratic bottlenecks, the unrelenting cold, and yes, the cost. In this section, we'll explore why Everest is still the crown jewel of mountaineering despite all its flaws. From the routes and preparation to the first gut punch cost estimates, we'll take a look at what it takes to just get to base camp. Because trust me, even that's an odyssey. Ready to ascend? Buckle up. This is Everest. Let's talk money. Because before you ever set foot on Everest, you're already climbing something else. The world's most expensive ladder. A full Everest expedition in 2025. Expect to spend anywhere from $40,000 to $100,000 depending on how comfortable or reckless you want to be. On the lower end, that budget gets you a bare-bones climb, a permit, basic oxygen, minimal support, and a guide who probably yells good luck from Camp 2. On the luxury end, think gourmet food, personal Sherpas, heated base camp domes, and Instagram content so polished it needs its own manager. Here's how it breaks down. Nepal climbing permit, $15,000. That's just to be allowed on the mountain. It doesn't include snacks. Support staff. You'll need Sherpas, cooks, yaks, and someone to make sure your tent doesn't blow off the mountain. That's another $10,000 to $20,000. Oxygen. You'll use about 5 to 6 bottles, each costing $500 to $700. Yes, you're paying $3,000 to breathe. Who knew air could be luxury? Gear and clothing, high-altitude boots, suits, goggles, gloves. If it's not warm enough to survive a blizzard in space, it's not warm enough for Everest. Gear costs can top $8,000. Insurance, flights, tips, evacuation coverage, visa fees, surprise expenses. Add another $5,000 to $10,000. Everest has a way of introducing you to costs you didn't know existed. And we haven't even mentioned the snowstorms, altitude headaches, and the very real possibility that you might spend 60 days on this expedition and not even summit. So why do people still come? Why do they train for years, risk frostbite and financial ruin to walk across ladders tied together with prayer flags over bottomless crevasses? Because Everest isn't just a mountain, it's a symbol, a trophy, a high-altitude metaphor for impossible goals. And like all grand pursuits, it doesn't come cheap. But then again, what dream ever does? Above 8,000 meters lies the infamous death zone, named not because it's poetic, but because it's quite literal. Up here, there's not enough oxygen to sustain human life for long. Your body begins to shut down. Judgment falters, muscles wither. And yet, this is where the final push to the summit begins. It's also where Everest shows its true colors. One moment you're surrounded by breathtaking views, stretching into Tibet and Nepal. The next, you're stuck in a traffic jam of climbers, some of whom trained for years, and others who trained with their credit card. You've probably seen the photos, lines of climbers waiting like it's a theme park ride, except instead of churros at the end, there's a chance of frostbite, brain edema, or worse. And yes, the line forms in the death zone, where every extra minute could cost you dearly. Despite the crowds and chaos, summit day on Everest is still one of the most powerful human experiences imaginable. You start climbing at midnight, your world lit only by headlamps and stars. The cold is so sharp it bites through layers. Every breath feels like sucking air through a straw. But then, just as the sun rises, you hit the Hillary Step, traverse the final ridge, and stand on the rooftop of the world. And in that surreal moment, surrounded by wind, prayer flags, and silence, something shifts. People cry. They laugh. Some just sit down and stare in disbelief. Not because it was easy, but because it was worth every ounce of pain, every second of doubt. But Everest demands respect. In 2019 alone, 11 climbers died, many due to inexperience, misjudgment, or simply bad luck. This mountain doesn't care about your resume or your Wi-Fi followers. It only answers one question. Did you earn this? Because the real story isn't the photo on the summit, it's the journey back down. And the ones who make it home know this simple truth. Climbing Everest changes you, and sometimes it costs everything to find out how. Aconcagua, South America. If you've ever dreamed of climbing the highest mountain outside of the Himalayas, but aren't quite ready to sell your car for an Everest permit, welcome to Aconcagua. Towering at 6,961 meters, this icy giant in Argentina is the king of the Andes and the second highest of the 7 summits. It's where South America puts its foot down and says, yes, we do high altitude too. Aconcagua doesn't mess around. It might not require technical climbing on its most popular route, but don't let the lack of ropes and crampons fool you. This is a massive, unforgiving mountain. The air is thin, the wind cuts like a gaucho's knife, and the dry altitude will turn your sinuses into the Atacama. The journey begins in Mendoza, a lovely city best known for red wine and steak, which coincidentally are the last 2 luxuries you'll enjoy before diving into weeks of freeze-dried meals and trail mix. From Mendoza, it's a full-day drive into the wilderness where the comfort of soft hotel beds is replaced by dusty tents and suspiciously flat sleeping mats. But the real draw of Aconcagua? It's the challenge without the technical intimidation. That's why it's often called the highest trekking peak. Though anyone who's battled the altitude, fought through screaming winds at Camp Cholera, or tried to sleep while their heart races at 5,500 meters will tell you, calling it a trek feels a bit like calling a hurricane a light breeze. Still, climbers keep coming. Some are seasoned alpinists training for bigger Himalayan peaks. Others are regular adventurers chasing a dream, motivated by the raw appeal of standing nearly 7,000 meters above sea level without having to learn how to tie a figure-8 knot. And some, let's be honest, are just there to tick another summit off their 7 summits list, clutching their GPS like a passport. But whatever your reason, Aconcagua humbles everyone. It's less about flashy ice climbs and more about endurance, patience, and learning how to function with a headache the size of Patagonia. And this is only the beginning. Next up, we'll get into what it really costs to chase this monster. Spoiler alert, it's not llama cheap. So you want to climb Aconcagua? Great. But before you lace up your boots and start humming "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina," let's talk about something far less romantic: the cost. At first glance, Aconcagua is one of the more affordable 7 summits. You can find guided expeditions starting around $4,000, with more premium options climbing up to $7,500 to $9,000. Sounds like a deal compared to Everest or Vinson, right? Well, let's just say Argentina's tallest mountain has a sneaky way of adding zeros to your invoice. First, there's the permit fee, and this one's a wallet pincher. Up to $1,200 for foreigners climbing the normal route during high season. That's not for food, tents, or oxygen. That's just the official handshake to enter the park. Then, you've got mule service, because unless you want to haul a 25-kilo pack across a desert in blistering heat, you're going to need one. That's around $300 to $500, depending on how many avocado-based snacks you packed. Domestic flights, transport to the trailhead, accommodation in Mendoza, tipping the guides, travel insurance with a high-altitude clause, renting a satellite phone, gear rental, because your down jacket from a ski trip in 2012 won't cut it. It all stacks up. By the time you factor in everything, most climbers end up spending $6,000 to $10,000, even when they plan for half of that. And don't forget the food. You'll eat everything from lentils to pasta in a plastic bowl at 5,000 meters. And you'll love it, because your appetite triples and your standards halve. Some operators offer steak and Malbec at base camp to ease the pain. Others, powdered soup and hope. So yes, Aconcagua is cheaper than Everest, but don't be fooled into thinking it's budget friendly. It's more like, I didn't sell my car, but I'm definitely skipping next year's vacation. And remember, even if you spend 10 grand, there's still no guarantee you'll summit. Aconcagua, like all great mountains, doesn't care about your receipts. Summit day on Aconcagua is not glamorous. You wake up at midnight in a frozen tent, your sleeping bag covered in a thin layer of ice on the inside. You're groggy, cold, and questioning every life choice that led you here, especially that second helping of lentils the night before. Then, the climb begins. It's slow. It's relentless. Every step feels like someone turned up gravity. The air is thin, dry, and flavored with just a hint of regret. And if the wind decides to wake up, which it usually does, you'll get slapped across the face by Patagonia's finest invisible hand. The route itself isn't technical, but that doesn't mean it's easy. Long scree slopes, endless switchbacks, and false summits that break hearts faster than a bad Tinder date. By the time you reach the final ridge, your legs are shot, your lips are cracked, and your thoughts are a mix of motivational quotes and mild hallucinations. But then, you make it. 6,961 meters. The highest point in the southern and western hemisphere. The wind roars, the sky opens, and Argentina unfolds beneath your boots. You're above the clouds, above the Andes, and above every single problem you left behind at sea level. It's not just the altitude that takes your breath away, it's the moment. The realization that you dragged your exhausted, dust-covered body to the top of the world's second highest of the 7 summits, powered by willpower, questionable trail food, and maybe a mule or two. Aconcagua doesn't get the same fame as Everest or the drama of K2, but what it offers is purity. No helicopters, no luxury camps, no Wi-Fi, just grit, altitude, and a spectacular sense of achievement. And when you finally descend, stumble into Mendoza, and sit down with a glass of Malbec in one hand and a steak the size of your face in the other, you'll know you earned every bite. Because Aconcagua doesn't hand out summits, it makes you earn them. One painful, beautiful step at a time. Puncak Jaya, Oceania. If climbing Mount Everest is the ultimate Instagram flex, then Puncak Jaya is the mysterious legend that whispers, "Bet you've never even heard of me." Welcome to one of the least known but most legendary of the 7 summits, a vertical tooth of limestone thrusting through the clouds in the heart of Papua's jungle. Yes, jungle. You're not just climbing a mountain, you're Indiana Jonesing your way through rainforest, political drama, and the occasional armed local group. Adventure, anyone? Rising to 4,884 meters, 16,024 feet. Panchak Jaya is the highest point between the Andes and the Himalayas, and, plot twist, it's also next to the world's largest gold mine. That's right, while you're gasping for breath on the Tyrolean Traverse, some miner below you is probably wondering what you're doing up there without a paycheck. Unlike other peaks, this one doesn't come with yaks, tea houses, or even trails. In fact, for safety reasons, most operators now skip the jungle trek altogether and fly you in via helicopter. The views? Absolutely stunning. The logistics? Nightmarish. You'll likely experience weather delays, fuel shortages, and bureaucratic headaches before your crampons even touch the mountain. But all of that only adds to the mystique. Climbing Puncak Jaya is not about bragging rights. It's about entering a hidden world, where mist clings to jagged limestone, the glaciers are vanishing fast, and the journey feels like stepping into a lost chapter of a National Geographic explorer's diary. And we're just getting started. If you thought climbing Everest was expensive, wait until you try organizing a mountaineering trip to a remote jungle surrounded by political tension, tribal land disputes, and a mine guarded like Fort Knox. Panchak Jaya isn't just remote, it's practically mythical. And that remoteness, it comes with a price tag that might make your wallet start sweating before you do. The average cost for a guided expedition in 2025 to 2026, around $24,000 to $35,000. Yes, to climb a 16,000-foot mountain that's shorter than Kilimanjaro. Why so much? Simple. Logistics. 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 First, there's the helicopter transfer. The days of trekking through the jungle with a machete and a week's worth of mosquito bites are mostly over. Not because people got soft, but because it's dangerous. Civil unrest and access restrictions mean most expeditions now rely on helicopters to fly you directly to base camp. That flight alone can cost $8,000 to $12,000 per person, depending on group size and weather delays. And yes, weather delays are practically guaranteed. Then come the permits. You need clearance from both the Indonesian government and local tribal authorities. And if either changes their mind mid-expedition, you're grounded. Throw in international flights to Bali or Jakarta, internal flights to Timika or Nabire, satellite communication fees, expedition insurance, porters, food, gear transport, and guides trained for both rope systems and diplomatic crises. And suddenly, that $30,000 doesn't sound so outrageous, just slightly soul-crushing. And don't forget, there's no infrastructure here. Everything, fuel, tents, climbing hardware, even your dehydrated beef stew, has to be flown in. There are no cozy base camp bakeries, no Sherpa lodges. If something breaks, you fix it. If something goes wrong, you wait for a helicopter. And if a cloud sneezes, flights are canceled for days. So yes, Puncak Jaya might not look that tall on paper, but it's one of the costliest and most complex climbs in the world. Because climbing a mountain is one thing. Climbing a mountain nobody wants you to reach? That's elite level chaos. So, after dodging delays, deciphering permits, and surviving one of the most logistically tangled adventures in mountaineering, you finally made it to Karsten's base camp. You unzip your tent, step outside, and boom, a jagged wall of gray limestone shoots up into the mist. It's sharp, steep, and way more intimidating than the tropical location lets on. Panchak Jaya isn't just a high point, it's a true technical climb. You're using fixed ropes, harnesses, carabiners, ascenders, the full vertical playground. And you'll need every bit of it, because this isn't a hike. It's a granite knife edge. The limestone is sharp, wet, and slippery. And if you've never climbed on razor blade rock before, congratulations. Your gloves are about to die heroes. One of the most famous and heart-pounding sections is the Tyrolean Traverse, a high-wire style crossing where climbers clip into a rope system and pull themselves across a deep gap. Below, thin air, rocks, and questions like, why didn't I just take up golf? But here's the twist. The glaciers near the summit, the only tropical glaciers left on Earth, are melting fast. Scientists estimate they could disappear entirely within the next decade. So if you're climbing Puncak Jaya, you're not just bagging a summit, you're witnessing a vanishing world, one that may not exist for future generations of climbers. Reaching the top is surreal. There's no crowd, no colorful prayer flags, no fanfare, just rock, silence, and the knowledge that you're standing on the rarest of the 7 summits. Fewer people have summited Puncak Jaya than Everest in a single season. It's not the tallest, not the coldest, not even the most technical, but it might just be the most elusive. And when your helicopter finally buzzes back into the clouds to take you out, leaving the limestone spires behind like a fading dream, you realize something strange. This wasn't just a mountain. It was a story only a few people will ever get to tell. So, there you have it. 7 continents, 7 mountains, and a lifetime's worth of altitude headaches, soggy socks, and unforgettable views. The 7 summits aren't just peaks, they're milestones. Each one comes with its own personality, its own price tag, and its own way of testing who you are when the air gets thin and the comfort fades away. But here's the truth. This isn't just about standing on a summit and raising your arms in triumph. It's about everything in between. The weeks of training, the early mornings, the silent prayers, and cold tents, and those weird meals where you're not quite sure if it's pasta or punishment. It's about friendships formed in snowstorms, and the quiet awe of watching the sun rise from the roof of a continent. And whether you climb one, all 7, or just dream about them from the warmth of your couch, there's something in these mountains that calls to us. Something ancient, something honest. They strip away distractions, strip away excuses, and what's left is you. Just you, the mountain, and the question, how far am I willing to go? For some, it's about chasing records. For others, it's healing, purpose, or proving something to the world, or maybe just to themselves. Whatever your reason, the mountains don't care. They don't reward ambition. They reward resilience, and sometimes they don't reward at all. But when they do, when the summit finally appears out of the wind and snow, you're not just standing on rock. You're standing on a moment you'll never forget. So if you're watching this wondering, could I do it too? The answer is simple. You won't know until you start climbing. Thanks for watching. And remember, some people train for years to climb these mountains. Others just train their credit cards. Choose wisely.